The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Welcome to Albany County News. I'm Mary Rozak, the Director of Communications for Albany County. And for the next half hour, we are going to talk about a program and some numbers you'll be very interested in, and certainly 3 numbers that you need to know. Joining me today from the United Way of the Greater Capital Region is Rushka Tcholakova.
Yeah.
All right. Senior Vice President of Community Impact, and I had to rehearse that how many times in order to get that smile. Okay, we're gonna talk in just a moment, but we're both wearing red today.
Yes.
As we're taping this, we are taping in recognition, wearing clothes in recognition of Go Red for Women and heart health. Mm-hmm. So that's why we didn't color coordinate on purpose. We're doing it for a cause with my red pants and with our nice little pins. But we're here to talk about something. You were here about a year ago.
Yeah.
And we were talking. Yeah, it has been too long. We were talking about 211. And that's the number, the 3 numbers that I'm referring to.
3 magical numbers.
We all know about 911. Mm-hmm. And people in New York City have 311. Mm-hmm. We have 5. We have all kinds of things. But 211, something that when I worked at United Way was very involved with.
Yeah.
But people still, sometimes when I say 211, like, I don't know what that is. And I'm amazed because of having lived with it. Talk about 211 and why it's so important that we know those 3 numbers.
Sure, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always lovely to see you, Mary.
Oh.
So 211 is actually a number that was designated by the FCC in 1999, specifically for information and referral for health and human services across the country. Mm-hmm. Locally, we've had 211 since 2008, thanks to your efforts and the efforts of leaders after you. And I'm privileged to sit here now to continue to move this baton forward. Mm-hmm. In 211, historically, in 2017, we made a major milestone for 211. We made it available across the entire New York State, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, so we're never closed. Mm-hmm. And now we can also assist callers in over 200 languages, so language should not be a barrier. So it took us a while to build the capacity to serve the entire state.
Mm-hmm. People will not realize, in this day and age, everyone thinks everything is available everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is a heavy lift to get that done. How were you able to get that done, to get the coverage in the pockets? There were pockets of New York that didn't have that for quite some time.
I have to say, it all comes down to collaboration amongst the 211 call centers and also the United Ways across the entire state. We came together under the leadership of United Way of New York State and decided this has to be a goal for us as a statewide network, that every county counts, every individual, every family counts, and the service is so critical, especially when you think about a regular citizen, a regular student graduating high school, grows up to be an adult, might never be aware that there are so many health and human services, so many community-based agencies and services, government services, social agencies that provide a host of supportive networks and resources that in times of dire need, you always have somewhere to turn to. Mm-hmm. But if you've never been exposed to this world of beautiful nonprofits, of leaders that are trying to tackle the toughest problems that our regions face, you never know that you have this amount of resources at your fingertips. And folks normally turn to, their immediate family, their immediate friends, perhaps maybe their neighbors, their church. And outside of that, it's where do I go next?
Or there's also that issue. I mean, we all as human beings have an ego.
That's
not the bad. That's not with a capital E. That's we all have a certain sense of pride, and so some of that sometimes comes into play.
Absolutely. And so In 211's core service, we made sure that this is a service that we can offer when you don't know where to turn, or sometimes when the maze of services can be just so overwhelming and complex, and perhaps maybe you have a menu but don't know exactly which one is the right service for you. 211 is there to help guide you in answering some of those critical questions and help refer you to the agencies that are the most appropriate for you, that perhaps with eligibility guidelines.
Sure. So tell me, so when people call, what are some of probably the most common questions that they may have?
Well, considering it's tax season, right now all the calls primarily are around taxes. Historically, food has been a top call issue, but we've seen a change in trend over time, and housing now is becoming a top caller issue. Folks are looking for
finding housing or affordable housing?
Both. So either it's finding housing or shelter, or assistance with rent or mortgage, all the way down to legal services for advocacy and for rent or mortgage. So we're now diving a little bit deeper around housing issues with 211.
How much has the recent government shutdown and the workers who were furloughed, not getting paid, some who were actually on the job but still not getting paid, has that filtered in at all? I know United Way has had a campaign recently. I've seen the emails and the texts. How much has that played a role in 211 in the calls?
So 211 maintains its service to be confidential. So unless someone discloses specifically that they are of a certain population that's been affected, we don't dive into those issues with them. Again, to your point earlier, because folks still have pride and are suffering and are hurting, we want to make this call as easy for them as possible. So the only two qualifying things that we ask for is the zip code, and that's primarily so that we know that we're not referring you to a county that you don't even live in, to make sure that we're looking at resources closest to you. And then the other piece are, what are those immediate needs that you have? And sometimes, depending on how the conversation goes, the call specialists are trained to kind of listen for other indicators to see if maybe we need to dive a little bit deeper into this call to assess for perhaps other needs.
Because it usually isn't, I know from talking to our Albany County Department of Social Services, I know that it's not just one service someone needs. Oftentimes, as you're listening, it's something else. It's more than that, sometimes 2 or 3 different things.
Absolutely. Yeah, all the time. And so for us, we want to make sure that we don't come off that we're prying into somebody's story, but that we're asking guiding questions to help them out if we're seeing that they're struggling, maybe perhaps above and beyond what they're calling for. And so for any worker, regardless of whether they're a federal worker or a worker for a corporation, 211 is there for them. There's no income guidelines. There's no qualifications needed. If you're just finding yourself, or perhaps maybe your friend or your family member is suffering or needs assistance, 211 is there for you to call on behalf of them. This whole notion of I'm asking for my friend certainly is real when it comes to 211.
So let's also talk about the call center and the call center operators. So I know this is not something that's operated right out of the United Way building, but I don't know how it actually works and how you're doing it now, since it's all across the state. Have you combined forces?
We have.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
So in order to keep operational costs low, it didn't make sense for us to open up call centers across the entire state, especially since technology has advanced so much to where now workers can work from home, workers can work from a different state. And so for us, we want to make sure that we're keeping 211 in New York State, but that we're operating it in a way that it makes it the most efficient service. So for the Greater Capital Region, the 211 calls are handled out of the 211 call center in the Hudson Valley, which is a program of the United Way of Westchester Putnam. So it's still within the United Way family, and this is the beautiful thing about the collaborative effort, is that we're identifying different ways to work together to leverage resources so we don't have to continuously reinvent the wheel. And because of that, we've been able to expand services above and beyond the footprint of the Greater Capital Region. So as United Way of the Greater Capital Region, we now have a 7-county footprint. We just took on Columbia and Greene counties. But when it comes to 211, our partnership with United Way of New York State and with our colleagues around us, our coverage for 211 is a 12-county footprint.
Right.
So we, as United Way of the Greater Capital Region, have a responsibility to ensure that 211 is available in the 12 counties that have been designated by us, because some of our colleagues that are near us perhaps might not have the same funding resources available to them.
Sure.
And because this is such a community-driven resource, and that it's, again, our goal is we want to make sure this is available to every family, every person in every county. We made this partnership happen for the good of everyone.
So we're talking about all the way up to Ward and Washington counties.
Yep.
Out west, you're talking about Montgomery.
Fulton, Montgomery.
Montgomery. And then, of course, if we look to the south.
Schoharie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So it really is a vast territory, and that's a lot of people.
It's a lot
to
of
cover.
people. And the only way that we can do that is by having a strong partnership with the United Ways that are the boots on the ground in those counties. Sure. Otherwise, the service will not be accessible. So it's, I mean, when you talk about partnership, like this is partnership
Sure.
in action.
So expanding to 24/7. That people there's a huge cost involved, I would assume, in doing that. Let's talk a little bit about how that is funded. I mean, it's a partnership, but how does that work?
Creativity. So there's a lot of thinking outside the box that happens when it comes to operating 211. So we actually have a partnership with 2 call centers to operate the normal hours and the after hours. Again, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we're always looking at how do we maintain costs so that we're not skyrocketing. And so for us, it made the most sense. Again, there are certain call centers that were able to launch 24/7 services before other call centers, and for us, it's rather than reinventing the wheel, let's partner with the folks that are a little bit ahead so we can get coverage. And so we're thankful for everyone being so open with us and making sure that they're jumping in to ensure that we have this service.
Now, you actually were recently out in San Diego.
I was. Yes.
And you have some ideas where you were sharing them with partners, and talk about some of the things that you talked about in San Diego.
So we've been in a partnership with the Alliance for Better Health, which is a local PPS that's been designated to oversee district funding and address the social determinants of health, and really work with the state and local hospitals to reduce Medicaid unnecessary hospital usage, ER. And so through this partnership, it really helped us broaden our viewership of how 211 can be leveraged beyond just information and referral.
In what way?
So through this partnership, we are able to manage patients in and out of a patient portal. So 211 assesses what the patient's needs are based on the referrals that are coming in through the organizations, and then refer those patients to organizations. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the administrative burden away from the patient, from the client, from the caller, and putting it back into the system to say, we need to do a better job of making sure that these services don't get dropped, and that this person gets referred to the most appropriate services, and that we're following through to make sure that they're getting them.
So does that work as someone is being discharged? It's an automatic. Okay.
Yeah. And so because of this model, we're now looking into, well, what else can 211? If you think about sort of the infrastructure that 211 has of being able to operate be live and in action 24/7, we can do so much more. So when you think about all the different needs that a regular resident might have, whether it's there's a pothole or a broken light, stoplight, or a stop sign, or you need to call your local police department, but you don't know the number. There's so many different numbers that are out there. 211 can really be positioned to serve as that triage number to take in those types of calls and say, give me one moment and I'll connect you to the right service. Again, if this is supposed to be an information and referral for services that are non-emergency, if you just think about it from that lens, the world just blows up. And when you think about all the technology that's available in terms of texting, in terms of live chat, in terms of making sure and following up with you in real time, all the way down to if we know that some of our callers are repeat customers, repeat callers, there's a different way that we can be serving them if we start to design customer profiles, so we can serve you much better. So if Mary,
but that would take away the anonymity.
That would.
Yeah.
So San Diego, what the 211 did there is they realized that a lot of their callers were repeat callers. So they surveyed them and said, we want to serve you better. Would you be opposed to us creating a user profile for you so we can better understand what services are working and what services aren't? And what they realized is that customers want this. And when you think about how we have user profiles for Amazon, for Facebook, we're accustomed to, and for the most part, when you go to your neighborhood pizza place, when you go to your local bank, you expect that people will get to know you and start to greet you and start to give you that customized service. Why shouldn't we expect the same from the health and human service sector? And because of the success rate of 211 there, having the user profiles and being able to say, John, welcome back. What's going on? What can we do better? Did the previous service help you? Tell us more. It allows us to provide you with a much better customer service so that you can get a much better outcome. But more importantly, it also allows us to keep accountability to the organizations that we're referring you to. So if you do not have a good customer experience, 211 can follow up with the organization to better understand what happened. So in a sense, now we're also serving as your advocate. So you have another champion in your corner.
Okay. It's an interesting approach and an interesting way to have grown on that original idea and concept.
But also think about 311 in New York City and Rochester and Buffalo, the tremendous service that 311 offers to residents. You know, it takes a lot of money to launch a service like that, but 211 is already there. And for the most part, we have these numbers available locally, but it's a 518, et cetera, for every different service. So imagine if we were able to put all these numbers under one roof, so the caller just has to call 211 and we can hear and listen to what your service needs are and direct you to that appropriate division, department, whatever it is. It'll be beautiful and cost effective.
Certainly would be. Hold that thought for just one moment. I want to remind people that we are talking with Rushka Tcholakova.
Yes.
United Way of the Greater Capital Region. Which are you guys going to change names if you're expanding? Or should I wait and ask Peter when I think
that's a Peter question.
Just thinking because it's Greater Capital Region certainly it encompasses the other two counties.
Maybe just put a bold on the G for Greater.
Yes, maybe
Greater Capital.
That's a marketing thing. We got to talk to Lisa about that. But let's talk more about 211. It's great. They've got that in there. You've got the infrastructure.
Yeah.
But I know there are challenges, and this is going to get a little dicey. But when someone already has a 311, or there is that proprietary, we want to have our stuff, we want to have our number. That's challenging. How have you been approaching that? I mean, I'm just going to say, the state. It's always been, a little tough because the state has a variety of 800 numbers, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Except the 211 concept really does make sense. So how do you keep hammering away at that?
I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? We want to make sure that services are available to our constituencies. And we also want to do it in a way that's the most cost-efficient, cost-effective, yet reliable way. And so while there's such a great need to establish certain services, which we're not opposed to, at the end of the day, the question is, great, how can we collaborate on the back end to make this experience the friendliest experience for the consumer that it's being served? So whether it's 211 being at the forefront or 211 being at the back end, for us we have this great database of information. Rather than recreating the wheel and starting a new one or starting another one, we can easily connect it to whatever program that you want to launch, and we can be behind the scenes. So there's less amount of effort that's needed to do the same thing from two separate entities. So again, 211 doesn't need to be at the forefront. It can be at the back end doing a lot of the legwork because we've been doing it and we've been there. So we understand what the challenges are, and there's obviously a lot of work that goes into to ensure data quality because we don't want to give callers information that's not accurate or out of date. And so it makes sense to have one entity be responsible for that. But the front end usage could look very differently, and we're totally fine with that. But the back end, let's figure out how we can make those connections on the back end. So we're working together.
So you continue to have those discussions and lobbying, and
Yes.
and even having help us maybe some dollars and cents that could come along with it.
Hey,
Yeah, I know.
you got any friends?
Not going to turn that down, right?
No, not at all.
What is your big wish for 211 at the end of the day? What is it that you having gone to the conference, having talked about, the different opportunities, what do you see? Because I see a passion when you're talking, and you really are committed in a way that it's not just your job, and that comes through. So what is your vision? What do you see as your big wish?
Gee, Jenny, is this an X-nay on the wishes for more wishes here? I want to rub on the magic lamp. I can't even begin to, there's so many wonderful opportunities, but at the end of the day, my biggest wish is for that mom, for that teenager, for that person who just has hit a roadblock or feels like they've been pushed up against the corner, that 211 is there for you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what initiatives that we have going and what initiatives we don't have, or what are the opportunities that are missed, where else can we go. At the end of the day, if we're not doing a good job to make sure that that person knows that they have an ally and an advocate and that we're there to support them, then we haven't done our job. And I think everything that in terms of business streams or ways that we can be doing things better, at the end of the day, it all circles back. It's because of that person. We want to make sure that we're reaching that person and they are not being pushed through the ringer of, you have to go here, but you have to go there, but you have to do this, but you have to do that. We can do better in creating systems and making sure that these systems are working for the outcomes of the individual. Because at the end of the day, people want to work and people want to contribute to their neighborhood, to their community. And so let's empower them to do that by making the system a little bit easier for them to navigate.
So a call to action right now. So there are people that are watching this in various Albany County communities. What can they do? Certainly, if they think that they have a question and they want to utilize the service, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. What else can they be doing to help 211?
I think first and foremost, let's do away with the stigma. And if there's family or neighbors or friends that you may think are struggling or maybe not, talk about this resource, because you never know who's listening at what level, and you never know who's listening for someone else. Mm-hmm. So the more that we can talk about this and make it present, the better. The second piece, obviously right now we're going through a state budgetary session, and part of 201's funding is coming from the state. We'd like to continue that partnership. So a phone call to your local state representative would also help out to make sure that 211 is on their radar. Mm-hmm. And then obviously I encourage everyone to call 211 just so that they can experience the call specialist on the other hand. Even if you don't need a resource, but you just want to see what it's all about, call them. They're there to welcome you.
Sure. How big an operation is the call center? Do you know off the top of your head? I hate to put you on the spot.
No.
Because 24/7 is a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, they're also trained to get through again, we don't ask too many questions, so the calls happen very, very quickly. So the operation is very, very slim. Again, we're trying to minimize costs. And because 211, if you think about a call center, the technology can travel with the person. So it's not always that the person needs to be in a traditional office. So they can be operating from home, which reduces overhead costs even more. And with that, we're always looking to see how can we reduce costs even more to make this service available to a greater population.
Well, I've got to imagine it expands a little bit now that it's tax season. And let's take the last 2 minutes or so to talk about Cash Coalition, VITA, people who want to get their taxes done. Tell me how this works.
So, for anyone that wants to get their taxes done, if they make $55,000 or less, they are eligible for a federal program called the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. It was launched by the IRS in the 1970s. Amazing. And it's a service that provides free tax preparation amongst a host of other services, like for example, if you need to get your 2018 taxes done, your 2017, 2016, we can go back as far as 5 years. If you happen to get a letter from the IRS saying we need a little bit more information, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program is there to assist.
And all of these people, when they're volunteers, but they have been
IRS trained.
Okay.
So they have to go through an intensive training program. They have to get certified, and they have to get certified at different levels. So you can either get certified to do basic taxes, intermediary, and advanced. So again, we want to make sure that if we're serving folks making $55,000 or less, that we can serve all the different scenarios that could come in our doors. Then the other program that we have extends the income guidelines to $66,000. So anybody making $66,000, it doesn't matter if you're a single person or a household. If the total household income is $66,000 or less, and you feel equipped to do your taxes on your own, we do have myfreetaxes.com.
Okay.
It's an online self-service platform that you can do your taxes for free at the federal level and at the state level.
So do you go somewhere, make an appointment to go somewhere, and you do it yourself, or how do you?
You can do it from your iPhone or your cell phone.
Okay.
You can do it from your computer. It's an online tax preparation program
that you can
that's self-serve.
Okay. Got it. So
and they have a hotline that you can call. So if you get stuck, there's an operator that's available that can walk you through wherever you might be stuck within the application.
That information available on the website, or you call 211, or how do you?
Yes. So for any of these services, if you want to have the assistance of someone else doing your taxes for you, you can call 211 and make an appointment with a tax site near you. Or if you want to prepare your own taxes, you can just go to myfreetaxes.com. If you forget, you can also call 211. They can provide you with the website, and you can go in there and start to do your own taxes.
Wow, incredible stuff, and the time has just zipped by.
Amazing.
It is amazing.
30 minutes.
Rushka, we're going to have you on again in the not so distant future to talk more about 211 and the great advances, I'm sure, after this legislative budget has gone through that you've made. But thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Right. We've been talking with United Way of the Greater Capital Region's Senior Vice President of Community Impact, Rushka Tcholakova. I'm Mary Rozak. This has been Albany County News. We'll see you again soon.